Have you ever taken a moment to reflect on the true meaning of growing older? On how we can face loneliness, loss, and the inevitable marks of time with serenity and purpose? Growing old is not merely about accepting reality, but also embarking on a journey to rediscover oneself and find joy in the simplest things. This video goes beyond sharing perspectives on aging. It draws you into the deeply emotional story of Edward Cullen, a 62-year-old man who has experienced the full spectrum of life's emotions. After losing his beloved wife, the life companion who stood by him through all of life's ups and downs, Edward faces profound grief and emptiness as his children move away to build their own lives. The once lively home, filled with laughter, now echoes with silence, amplifying the loneliness he endures every day. Why should you stay and watch this story to the end? Because Edward's journey is not just personal, it's a mirror reflecting the reality many of us face as we enter the later stages of life. His challenges, dealing with the pain of loss and finding meaning in life amidst isolation, are experiences that most of us will encounter or have witnessed in our loved ones. Edward's story inspires you to confront inevitable losses, rebuild meaningful connections, and learn how to live fully, even when standing alone. In this journey, Edward meets Vera, a woman with a compassionate heart and incredible resilience. Vera enters Edward's life unexpectedly, but her presence becomes a pivotal turning point in his journey. Through their gentle conversations, Vera helps Edward open his heart and realize that aging is not an end, but an opportunity to begin a new and meaningful chapter. With Vera, Edward learns to find joy in small, simple things, from tending to the garden to strolling along the river on quiet afternoons. These seemingly ordinary moments become sources of strength for him to face aging with courage and hope. Join us in exploring Edward's story and see how people can find connection, love, and purpose, even in the most challenging circumstances. Life doesn't end when we grow old. It merely transitions into a new phase, where resilience and gratitude are the keys to unlocking true joy and peace. Additionally, Edward's story reveals the challenges that older adults often face when making major life decisions, such as moving into a retirement home or living independently at home. These are not merely practical decisions, but ones laden with deep emotional and psychological significance, requiring careful consideration, confidence, and an open heart. Edward once stood at the crossroads of these difficult choices, and through his story, we understand that making such decisions is rarely easy. Still, it can be an opportunity to reshape life more positively. As you follow his journey to the end of the video, you'll uncover invaluable lessons about preserving and cherishing the important relationships in life, from family and friends to new connections you may build. Edward will inspire you to embrace independence, learn to accept reality, and gradually take control of your own life, even during stages that many might see as the closing chapters. No matter your age, 60, 70, or beyond, Edward's story is a powerful reminder that life never stops offering opportunities to grow and enjoy. Regardless of how many challenges the journey of aging presents, the lessons from Edward's experiences will help you see the value of making the most of the time you have left. From quiet days of reflection to moments of determined action, you'll realize that these later years can be the most meaningful if you fully live them. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I sincerely encourage you to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. These stories and lessons are personal reflections and sources of motivation for many others. If you find this video helpful, please help spread its message by liking it and sharing it with your friends, family, or anyone you think could be inspired by these meaningful messages. Finally, remember that the aging journey is not an end, but a new chapter where you can discover deeper meaning in life, embrace change with gratitude, and live each day with true joy. Let Edward's story serve as a guiding light to help you walk this journey with confidence and hope. Let's come together and listen to Edward share his life story. My story begins at the point where life suddenly took an unexpected turn. I once imagined that retirement would be the time to enjoy the fruits of my labor, built through years of hard work. I had carefully planned and meticulously calculated every step for the future I was certain would come. But, as life often does, it delivered an unforeseen surprise. I had to retire earlier than expected. Financially, I wasn't in trouble. I had been prudent with my spending for a long time, keeping a tight grip on my budget and saving for harder days. But there was one thing I had never prepared for: the sudden emptiness when the busy rhythm of life was replaced by stillness. In the past, the family was the center of my world. I still vividly remember the days when the house was filled with laughter and the sound of little footsteps as the children ran around. My pride and joy were Paul, my son, and Rose, my daughter. Both have grown up, started their own families, and are building their lives in their own ways. As a father, I couldn't be happier to see my children stable and successful. But deep inside, I always longed to return to those days when my little house was brimming with life, laughter, and happiness. As time passed, the house gradually grew emptier. Family dinners became a memory. The calls to one another in the kitchen now only echoed in my mind. The emptiness came not only from my children visiting less often, but also from a greater loss. Camelia, the wife I loved most in this world, my companion through all of life's ups and downs, passed away a few years ago after a long illness. Her departure left a void in my heart and took away the light that once illuminated this home. Though I've tried to accept it and learn how to move on, the silence Camelia left behind continues to haunt me every day. Waking up in a cold, empty house each morning, sitting alone in the chair we used to share every evening. These moments constantly remind me of what I've lost. Meanwhile, my children's lives are swept up in their busy routines. I know they love me, but the reality is that their visits have become increasingly infrequent, and our calls grow shorter with each passing day. With every moment, I feel more acutely that I am facing old age alone, a solitude I was never truly prepared to confront. That afternoon, I sat alone on the worn-out sofa in the living room, enveloped by the silence of the empty house. The fading sunlight streamed through the window, casting quiet shadows on the bare walls. The stillness wasn't just around me. It seemed to seep into every corner of my soul. The only sounds were the ticking of the wall clock and the steady rhythm of my heartbeat. Outside, life went on, the sound of cars passing by, the distant chirping of birds. But it all felt like part of a separate world. The house that was once filled with laughter and warmth is now only a memory. Family dinners, lively conversations, and even the hurried footsteps of the children running down the hallway have all become things of the past. Every room seems to echo with a loneliness I cannot deny. Sitting there, I felt a profound sadness. It was like a cold stream seeping into my bones, making me shiver. I tried to push these emotions out of my mind, but they kept returning stronger each time. The phone rang as I was drowning in these thoughts, breaking the heavy silence. I reached for the phone and saw Paul's name on the screen. Maybe he'll come by today, I thought, a glimmer of hope lighting up inside me. "Dad, are you home tonight?" Paul's voice came through, urgent and tinged with a hint of worry. "Something is pressing I need to take care of, and I might be unable to visit. I hope you understand." I paused momentarily, feeling a dull sense of disappointment rise within me. But I quickly pushed it aside. I knew Paul was busy. He had a family, a job, and countless other responsibilities. How could I demand more attention from my son when his life was so full? "It's okay, Paul. Go ahead and take care of your things," I said, trying to keep my tone light and calm. "I'm fine." After hanging up, I set the phone down, feeling an invisible emptiness spreading in my chest. The walls around me seemed colder, and the faint light outside the window no longer felt warm enough to reach me. I sat there, reflecting on how much things had changed. Life felt like a river flowing steadily, carrying everyone further away, leaving me silently on the shore. Paul still loved me. I knew that. But the reality was that he was preoccupied with his own family, and I didn't want to become a burden, an old father clinging to the attention of those I loved. And yet, a part of me couldn't help but feel the emptiness. I wondered, is this how aging works? Quietly, lonely, and with the acceptance that the world keeps moving forward, even as you feel like you're being left behind? I had worked tirelessly for so many years, pouring my heart and soul into caring for my family. I believed all those long years of dedication would lead to a warm and fulfilling future, surrounded by my loved ones. But now, in retirement, everything has changed. Camellia, my beloved wife, is no longer here, and my children, Paul and Rose, are busy with their lives. I am left to face the silence of this large house alone. With each passing day, the emptiness seems to grow deeper. Day by day, I feel myself sinking into a cold void, where the walls that once echoed with laughter now reflect only the lonely sound of my voice. The next morning, as I was fumbling around, trying to find something to occupy myself, my neighbor Robert stopped by. Robert and I are nearly the same age, and over the years, we've often chatted about everything, from small neighborhood matters to the bigger stories of life. But I sensed something unusual this time, a heavy atmosphere enveloping the space between us. Robert sat on the chair opposite me, and we both remained silent for a few minutes. Neither of us spoke, the only sound being the soft breeze drifting through the window. Finally, he let out a long, weary sigh that carried both sadness and fatigue. "So, it's just you here now, isn't it?" he asked, his gaze resting on the empty walls around me. I nodded, unsure of what to say. His question rang out like a stark reminder of my reality. "Same for me," he continued, his voice lowering as though sharing a painful secret. "My wife is always busy with work trips, and the kids, they have their own lives." Robert's words felt like a mirror reflecting the emptiness within me. Both of us, two men who were once full of hope and vitality, were now trapped in the solitude of our later years. "Have you thought about it?" Robert asked suddenly, his eyes piercing into mine, as if trying to find the answer buried deep within me. "What will happen if one day you're completely alone? If no one visits or calls to check in anymore?" His question sliced through the silence like a sharp blade, leaving me with an inexplicable sense of unease. I felt as if my heart sank, plunging deep into my chest. The thought of being left entirely alone in this large house, with no one to talk to, no one to check in or care for, sent shivers down my spine. I didn't answer Robert's question, but it lingered in my mind like a persistent ghost. His words were not just a warning. They were a stark reminder of the cold reality of aging, where loneliness isn't just a state of being, but a challenge to be faced and overcome. But how could I overcome it? That was the question I found myself grappling with. Robert's question echoed in my mind like a relentless refrain. What will I do if I'm left alone? I tried to push it away, to keep myself busy and avoid confronting that emptiness. But no matter what I did, the question remained, clinging to me like a shadow I couldn't shake, forcing me to ponder the possibility of a lonely future. A few days later, as I read an old book Camellia had loved, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I saw Rose, my daughter, standing there with Ven, my grandson. Ven's bright face brought a fleeting warmth, but I quickly noticed the urgency in Rose's eyes. Rose held a few familiar dishes from Ven's childhood, perhaps apple pie and chocolate chip cookies, treats I used to make for my kids when they were young. I guessed she hoped these small gestures would make the visit more meaningful. But as soon as she stepped through the door, Rose hurriedly spoke. as if needing to explain right away. "Dad, I just stopped by so Ven could see you briefly. After that, I need to pick up Joe from school," she said, her voice tinged with worry, her eyes darting constantly to the clock. I tried to hide my disappointment, offering a tired smile to ease the atmosphere. "It's okay, Rose. Go ahead and take care of your things." "I'm fine," I said, trying to calm my voice. But as the words left my mouth, I felt the emptiness within them. Rose sat down on the sofa, but didn't stay long. Just a few minutes later, she was already on her feet, ready to leave. With the innocent eyes of a child, Ven looked back at me as his mother took his hand and led him out, as if silently saying he didn't want the visit to end so soon. I stood in the doorway, watching them disappear from view. Their footsteps echoed down the hallway, fading away until the familiar silence again engulfed the house. I returned to the living room, where the food Rose had brought still sat on the table, untouched. The scent of apple pie filled the air, stirring memories of the days when this house was alive with laughter, when Camellia was still here, and the children were always nearby. But now, the house seemed larger than ever. The silence felt like it was swallowing me whole. I sank into the chair, looking out the window as the sunset began to fall. The fading light cast a faint glow on the walls, but it wasn't enough to chase away the darkness inside me. I couldn't stop the tears that welled up and quietly rolled down my cheeks. The feeling of being left behind, even though no one intended to hurt me, weighed heavily on my heart. It felt like a silent yet powerful wave, sweeping away the small fragments of peace I had tried to hold on to. I wondered how much longer I could endure this loneliness, and if there would ever come a day when light would return to this empty house. That night, as I lay on the familiar yet cold bed, the haunting question echoed in my mind again, like a whisper I couldn't silence. What will I do if I'm left all alone? It wasn't just a passing thought, but a painful truth I could no longer ignore. I knew I couldn't drift aimlessly through these long, lonely, silent days. I had to do something, change something before the silence completely consumed me. A few days later, on a crisp morning, I ran into Robert at the park, where we both often came to breathe in the fresh air and feel a bit of the life moving around us. The park was lively that day. Children ran across the grass, young couples strolled hand in hand, and groups of older friends, like us, sat chatting on benches. Yet, all those sounds seemed like a faint mist, passing through without stirring any real emotion in me. Robert and I found a bench under a large tree. We sat silently for a few minutes, watching people come and go. I felt the stark contrast between the bustling energy around me and the emptiness in my heart. Finally, I broke the silence. "You were right," I said, my voice tinged with an emotion I couldn't suppress. I turned to Robert, my eyes filled with sadness and worry, which had been building up over the past few days. "I've thought a lot about what you said the other day. At this age, how will we get through it if we're left alone? I don't know if I can endure it." Robert nodded, his eyes reflecting deep understanding. "I've thought about it too," he replied, his voice warm and measured. "It's not easy, but I've realized that we can't just sit and wait for something to change. We have to act before the silence and loneliness become unbearable." He paused momentarily, as if to ensure I grasped the weight of his words. "There are a few things we can do," he continued, "to maintain our physical and mental health. First, we need to reconnect with life. Find a community, a group of people who share our interests, and build relationships. Second, we need to take better care of ourselves. Exercise daily, eat healthily, and find joy in small things. But most importantly, we need to rediscover our purpose in life. Without that, loneliness will always overshadow everything else." Robert's words felt like a faint light piercing through the night within me. I realized he wasn't just speaking to me. He was also speaking to himself. We were both facing the same fears and the same struggles, and perhaps, in some way, we could support each other to get through this phase of our lives. "You're right," I replied, feeling a small spark of hope for the first time in days. "Maybe it's time for me to change how I live before loneliness becomes irreversible." Robert placed a hand on my shoulder, a simple, yet comforting gesture. "We'll do it, my friend. We won't let loneliness define our lives." The next day, I decided to start making changes. Each morning, I forced myself to leave the empty house and walk to the nearby park. The distance wasn't far, just a few minutes, but for me, it was a significant act. A way to break the cycle of solitude and silence that had engulfed my life. In those first mornings, my steps were heavy, as though the emptiness within me was holding me back. But as I breathed in the fresh air and let the gentle sunlight touch my face, I gradually felt lighter. I began to notice the little things around me: birds chirping in the trees, the dogs happily running beside their owners, and the joyful laughter of children playing tag. These sights gave me a sense of connection, as if I were slowly starting to rejoin the world. In the evening, I decided to stop by the community center near my house, a place I had passed by many times but never thought I would step into. I joined a group of older adults for chess games. The atmosphere there was warm, with soft lighting, friendly chatter, and everyday stories being shared. At first, I felt awkward. I didn't know anyone, and was constantly worried I would feel out of place among people who already knew each other. The loneliness within me seemed to pull me back, whispering that I didn't belong there. But I reminded myself that I had taken the first step and couldn't give up so easily. In the days that followed, I began to feel more at ease. I listened more than I spoke, occasionally sharing a small story about my life. Gradually, I realized that I wasn't the only one seeking connection. The people there carried their own stories and sorrows, but they had learned to soothe them through empathy and sharing. We played chess together, exchanged strategies, and sometimes laughed at silly mistakes. I listened to their stories about family and memories from their younger days, and in those moments, I felt warmth slowly return to my heart. These new friends helped fill the emptiness inside me and gave me a sense of belonging, something I had lost for a long time. As time passed, my life began to change. My morning walks and evening conversations at the community center became familiar routines, bringing a sense of balance to my soul. I didn't just find new joy. I rediscovered myself, a person who once loved life and believed every day was an opportunity to do something meaningful. And I knew that from here, things would only get better. One day, while sitting with Robert on a bench under the shade of a tree in the park, I felt a heavy weight on my heart. The surroundings were as peaceful as ever, the chirping of birds above, the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze, and the occasional footsteps of people passing by. But inside me, a wave of emotion was building. "Robert," I said, breaking the silence between us. "I don't know who else I can say this to, but lately, I felt like I'm drowning in my loneliness. It's not like before when I could simply enjoy the quiet. Now, the silence makes me feel lost." Robert turned to me, his eyes full of understanding. He didn't rush to respond, simply nodding gently to encourage me to continue. And so, I poured out everything I had been feeling. The pain of losing Camellia, the emptiness of seeing my children busy with their own lives, and the void I faced when confronted with long, purposeless days. When I finished, Robert let out a deep sigh. "I understand," he said, his voice gentle but filled with empathy. "After my wife passed away, I felt the same way. There were days when I woke up and wondered, why should I keep going? But then I realized something important." He paused momentarily, as if to ensure he had my full attention. "We don't need someone to depend on, but we do need someone to talk to, someone to share our joys and sorrows with, to remind us that we're still a part of this life. And sometimes, Just having someone there who listens and understands is enough to ease the pain. Robert's words felt like a light shining into the hidden corners of my heart. I realized that what I was missing wasn't someone to replace Camellia, but a connection, a simple yet profound bond with someone. I didn't want to depend on anyone or become a burden, but I longed for a companion to soothe the loneliness, someone to share the stories and feelings I had kept buried for far too long. "I think you're right," I replied, trembling slightly with emotion. "I'm not looking for someone to replace Camellia. She was the only one for me, but I need someone to remind me that I still have value and can still share the little things I hold in my heart." Robert placed a hand on my shoulder, a simple gesture filled with warmth. "And you will find that," he said with certainty. "We're never too old to form new connections. Life continues, and as long as we keep our hearts open, it will bring unexpected things our way." I sat there, letting Robert's words sink deeply into my heart. They weren't just words of encouragement, but a reminder that I wasn't alone. Despite its challenges and sorrows, life still held so much to cherish, if I was willing to reach out and embrace it. Then, Vera came into my life, like a warm breeze cutting through the long, cold days. From the moment she appeared, my once empty and silent home seemed to come alive. The walls no longer echoed with loneliness, but instead held the sounds of laughter, shared stories, and the gentle rhythm of two people finding harmony in life. Vera wasn't just a friend. She was a companion who brought back the light I thought I'd never find again. Together, we did simple yet meaningful things, strolling through the park, tending to the small garden in front of the house, or simply sitting side by side, sipping tea and reminiscing about our younger days. Those seemingly ordinary moments filled the voids I once feared would remain forever empty. One night, when I fell ill with a fever, Vera showed me the true meaning of having someone by my side. I vividly remember the feeling of delirium, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me, and the vague fear that came with feeling weak and helpless. But Vera didn't hesitate. The moment she realized I wasn't well, she acted like someone well accustomed to caring for others, her eyes filled with worry, yet radiating determination. She quickly fetched some medicine, not forgetting to bring a glass of warm water. With gentle yet decisive hands, Vera placed a cool, damp cloth on my forehead, each of her movements filled with care and determination. I remember the feeling of her hand resting lightly on my forehead, a touch that brought me an inexplicable sense of comfort. She stayed by my side throughout the night, occasionally checking my temperature and quietly reading a small book to keep herself awake. In the soft glow of the bedside lamp, I could see Vera's face, every expression radiating genuine concern. For the first time in many years, I felt a profound sense of safety, a reassurance that I didn't have to face life's challenges, big or small, on my own. Vera had stepped into my life and made it whole again. As I gradually recovered, I came to an important realization. Vera's presence had warmed my heart, making me believe that even in the later years of life, love and companionship could still bring about something truly magical. But then, as an inevitable life cycle, everything changed again. One afternoon, Vera received a phone call from her son, Enda. His voice on the other end was filled with excitement as he announced that he was getting married and wanted Vera to come live with him and his new family. I sat beside Vera as she took the call, watching her expression shift from surprise to emotion. When she hung up, the room grew heavy with silence. Vera tried to mask her confusion and emotion, but her eyes betrayed her worry. "Enda wants me to move back and live with his family," she said, trembling. "He said I would have my own space in the house, and I could help with the grandchildren in the future." I could feel the mixed emotions in Vera's voice. The excitement of being needed by her son intertwined with the hesitation of leaving the life we had built together. My heart felt as if it were being squeezed, As I listened to her words, I knew what was coming, and while every part of me wanted to hold on to her, I understood that this decision wasn't mine to make. "You should be with your son," I said, my voice steady, though I could tremble in every word. "As a mother, that's where you belong." Those words weighed heavily in my chest, like a stone pressing against each breath. Deep down, I didn't want her to leave. I wanted to hold on to the warmth, the laughter, and the simple moments we had shared. But I also knew that Vera deserved the chance to be close to her family and to witness the joy in her son's new chapter of life. The days that followed passed in quiet reflection. Vera didn't rush to decide, but I could tell she was leaning toward returning. She often sat by the window, gazing into the distance as if silently questioning whether this was the right choice. As for me, I stood quietly by her side, respecting the space and time she needed to decide. Eventually, Vera told me she had decided to move back to live with Enda. I smiled, trying to mask the emptiness that was beginning to fill my heart. The day Vera left, I drove her to the bus station. We talked as usual on the way, but both of us could sense the awkwardness lingering in the air. When we arrived, I carried her small suitcase and set it down by the waiting area. Vera turned to me, her eyes filled with gratitude and a hint of regret. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice trembling. "The time I spent here brought me so much joy and peace." I wanted to tell her that she had given me even more, that her presence had brightened the darkest corners of my life, that I would miss her every single day. But instead, I simply smiled and replied, "You'll always have a home here if you need it." As the bus pulled away, I stood there watching it disappear, feeling like my heart was being squeezed. Vera was leaving, taking with her a part of my life that I wasn't sure I could ever reclaim. And though it hurt, I knew this was the path she needed to take, and I couldn't stand in the way. Goodbyes are always hard, and parting with Vera was no exception. I tried to muster a smile that I hoped would be convincing enough to hide the ache quietly burning inside me. I wanted her to leave with a sense of ease, free from guilt or worry. As the bus slowly pulled away, I stood silently by the roadside, watching it fade into the distance. Vera sat by the window, waving at me one last time. I waved back, but as soon as the bus disappeared from view, my arm fell limply to my side, and an indescribable emptiness washed over me. Vera was gone, taking the warmth and light she had brought into my life. Loneliness, a familiar companion I had temporarily forgotten, returned now, stronger than ever. The house, which had once come alive with laughter and Vera's presence, fell silent again. The rooms echoed with emptiness again, as if the warmth she had brought was nothing more than a fleeting dream. Goodbyes are always hard, and parting with Vera was no exception. I tried to muster a smile that I hoped would be convincing enough to hide the ache quietly burning inside me. I wanted her to leave with a sense of ease, free from guilt or worry. As the bus slowly pulled away, I stood silently by the roadside, watching it fade into the distance. Vera sat by the window, waving at me one last time. I waved back, but as soon as the bus disappeared from view, my arm fell limply to my side, and an indescribable emptiness washed over me. Vera was gone, taking the warmth and light she had brought into my life. Loneliness, a familiar companion I had temporarily forgotten, returned now, stronger than ever. The house, which had once come alive with laughter and Vera's presence, fell silent again. The rooms echoed with emptiness again, as if the warmth she had brought was nothing more than a fleeting dream. I tried to carry on with my life as before. I still took my morning walks in the park and stopped by the community center in the evenings. But now, every activity felt like missing something. The sense of sharing and companionship. The chess games were no longer as enjoyable, and the stories I shared seemed to lack the presence of that one special listener. Whenever my children called, I always reassured them that I was fine. I told Paul and Rose that everything was going well, and I was keeping busy with my activities. But in truth, as soon as the calls ended, the silence enveloped me again like a heavy, suffocating blanket. I knew my children loved me, but I also understood that they had their own families and responsibilities they couldn't set aside. The visits became less frequent, and I didn't blame them. Life is just that way. But that truth didn't ease the loneliness growing within me, becoming more pronounced each day. Once again, I realized that I had to learn how to face myself and confront the empty spaces within me that no one could completely fill. But this time, I wasn't sure if I could be as strong as before, as loneliness slowly gnawed away every corner of my soul. One late afternoon at the community center, I sat in my usual corner of the room, surrounded by familiar faces I saw daily. But that day, the disconnection within me was stronger than ever. The laughter and chatter around me seemed unable to reach me. I held a chess piece in my hand, but my mind wandered elsewhere, to a place where loneliness seeped into every corner of my being. Lost in thought, I was suddenly pulled back to the present when I overheard a group of older adults nearby having a conversation. They discussed a topic I didn't expect to resonate with so deeply: moving into a retirement home. Their conversation began with simple observations, but quickly became more profound when an elderly man turned to me and asked, "What do you think about moving to a retirement home? Living alone is difficult, but are you sure it's the right choice? What if you end up feeling even more isolated there?" I looked up, slightly surprised by the unexpected question. All eyes in the group turned toward me, waiting for an answer. I remained silent for a moment, as if carefully weighing my words. "Thank you for your concern," I began, my voice steady, though my heart was filled with conflicting emotions. "I've thought long and hard about this. I know a retirement home isn't a perfect choice, but for me, it's better than staying home alone, facing the cold, empty walls daily. I need a place to spend my final years with peace and genuine connections." I paused for a moment, letting my words settle in the air. The group nodded, but their expressions suggested they weren't entirely convinced. An elderly woman, her eyes filled with concern, spoke gently. "But what about your children? Surely they still care for you? Do you think this decision might make them feel guilty?" That question made me pause for a moment. I had asked myself this countless times, and now, facing it in front of others felt even more burdensome. "I understand what you're saying," I replied, trying to smile. "My children love me, but they have their own lives, families, and responsibilities. I don't want to become a burden to them. I want them to live fully, with joy, without constantly worrying about me. And honestly, I think a retirement home might be where I can find a community, a sense of connection that I no longer feel here." The room fell silent for a moment. I could sense the empathy in their gazes, but I also noticed traces of doubt and wistfulness on their faces. "Regardless," I continued, my voice firmer, "I believe I'm doing the right thing. I've been here long enough to know my life needs something new. Perhaps a retirement home won't be perfect, but at least it's a place to start again." My words seemed to bring the conversation to a close, but within me, they sparked an unprecedented sense of certainty. I didn't know exactly what lay ahead, but I knew I couldn't stay here any longer, bound by memories and a loneliness that refused to let go. This decision was mine, and no matter how difficult it might be, I believed it was the necessary step toward finding peace for myself. At the retirement home, my life gradually found a different, yet meaningful rhythm. The first few days were unfamiliar, but I quickly realized that I wasn't alone. Every morning, I began my day with light exercise in the small garden of the home, a place where flowers bloomed in abundance, and the fresh air brought a sense of tranquility. I joined activities I had never considered: art classes for seniors, lively singing sessions, and simple team games that brought so much laughter. From those initial moments of shyness, I slowly became friends with those around me. Everyone had stories, memories, and sorrows, much like mine. We shared not only our joys, but also our losses, and that made me feel connected, understood, and appreciated. Like a lingering shadow, the loneliness I once endured no longer weighed down my soul. Instead, I felt a new sense of peace, belonging to a community where I no longer had to face time's challenges alone. My days passed with a gentle but meaningful rhythm. I often spent time in the small library at home, immersing myself in books I had never had the time to read before. In the afternoons, I played chess with friends, or simply sat and talked, sharing stories from the past. Those moments, though simple, brought a joy and sense of fulfillment I had once thought lost forever. As the sunset cast its warm glow in the evenings, I often sat by the window, looking out at the garden illuminated by small lights. I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. Life at the retirement home wasn't just a place where I rediscovered connection and found hope again. For the first time in years, I felt I wasn't merely existing, but truly living. The pain and loneliness of the past were now distant memories. I realized that even as old age approaches, we can still find new meaning in life, if only we dare to step out of fear and open our hearts to the unknown. One peaceful morning, as I was reading in my room, the sudden ring of the phone shattered the silence. I picked up, not realizing that this call would change everything. "Dad," Paul's voice came through, heavy and worried. "The doctor said Angelina's condition isn't good. They're doing their best, but there's not much hope." Paul's words hit me like a heavy blow, making my heart feel like it had stopped. I went silent for a few seconds, trying to gather my thoughts. When I finally regained a bit of composure, my voice came out shaky. "What happened? How's Vera?" I asked, each word hesitant, as if I feared the answer. Paul explained the situation, but my mind could barely process anything. All I could think about was Vera, the woman who had brought light into my life, now fighting something far beyond my control. When I arrived at the hospital, the sight before me pierced my heart. Vera lay there, her frail body on the stark white bed, her breaths shallow and her gaze dim. I stepped closer, my trembling hand reaching for hers. The hand I had once known as warm and comforting was now frighteningly cold. "Vera," I whispered, barely recognizing my voice. "Please, don't leave me. We promised we'd get through everything together. You can't leave me now." Each word caught in my throat, and tears began streaming down my face. Vera, who had once been so strong and full of life, now lay there as if the very essence of her was slipping away. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, and in that faint, hazy gaze, I saw something, a serene peace, as though she was trying to tell me that everything would be all right. But she couldn't speak. A single tear rolled down her cheek, glistening like an unspoken goodbye. I leaned closer, gripping her hand tighter to keep her from slipping away. "Vera, please!" With her final breaths, she softly spoke. "You live well." Her voice was faint and fragile, like a whisper carried by the wind, but those words etched themselves into my soul as her final message. Then, her eyes slowly closed, and her hand gradually loosened in mine. I sat there, helplessly watching life slip away from Vera, who had been my anchor during the hardest times. At that moment, the world seemed to stand still. It was just Vera and me, surrounded by an endless void. She was gone, but her final words echoed in my mind. A message to keep living, no matter how hard it might be. And I knew that, despite the pain, I would try to honor that promise to her. Time seemed to stop. The entire world around me felt frozen in the moment Vera passed. A profound, indescribable sorrow engulfed me, gripping my heart so tightly it felt as if it might stop beating. I wanted to scream, cry out, and beg her to return. But deep down, I knew no plea could ever bring her back. I sat there for a long time, holding Vera's cold hand, unwilling to let go. Memories flooded back like an old film, each image vivid and clear. Her laughter, the gentle look in her eyes when we talked, and her patience as she cared for me during my illness. All of it was now just memories, things I could no longer touch. The days that followed passed like a blur. Everything around me seemed to lose its color. The daily routines, walking in the park and playing chess at the community center, were now hollow shells, no longer bringing me the joy they once did. I went through the motions like a machine, but my mind was always elsewhere, where Vera was still present. Friends and others at the retirement home began to notice the change in me. They didn't ask many questions, perhaps understanding that no words of comfort could ease the pain in my heart. But I saw the empathy in their eyes, looks filled with sympathy and shared sorrow, as if they too could feel a part of the loss I was enduring. I sat in my room each evening, gazing out the window as the sunset gradually faded. I tried to find some semblance of peace in the quiet scene, but everything only amplified my loneliness. I knew life would go on, but at that moment, I couldn't imagine how to move forward without Vera by my side. One day, as I sat quietly by the window at the community center, Ruth, a longtime friend, approached and sat beside me. She looked at me for a long moment, as if carefully considering what to say before speaking. "Mr. Cullen," she began gently, "Vera wouldn't want you to live in this sorrow forever. She loved you, and I'm certain she would want most to see you happy, even though she's no longer here." I looked at Ruth, a faint smile briefly crossing my face, but my voice trembled as I replied. "Letting go isn't easy," I whispered, "especially when you've loved someone with all your heart. Vera wasn't just my companion, but the only light in my darkest days. How can I let that light go without feeling empty?" Ruth said nothing, simply touching my shoulder in silent comfort. Though she didn't respond, her presence reminded me I wasn't alone in my pain. That evening, I had a conversation with Paul, my son. He had come to visit after hearing that I wasn't doing well. We sat in the living room, the space softly illuminated by the gentle glow of a table lamp. "You and Rose are still young," I began, my voice slow and laden with emotion. "You're both busy finding your paths, building your lives. But when you love someone with all your heart, that person is suddenly gone. It's a feeling that's hard to describe. The sky collapses on you, and everything you once knew vanishes. There's nothing left to hold on to, no light to guide the way." Paul sat there saying nothing, but I could see an effort to understand what I was feeling in his eyes. Perhaps he hadn't experienced such pain himself, but he knew that my pain was real, profound. "You don't have to say anything," I continued. "Just know that sometimes love brings both joy and sorrow. But no matter how painful, that love is still worth it." Paul nodded softly, as if to affirm that he was listening. While he couldn't offer any words to ease my pain, his quiet presence, his unspoken concern, was enough to remind me that I wasn't entirely alone in this. After silence, I asked Paul, "Would you like to go for a walk with me?" Paul looked up at me, his eyes reflecting a mix of surprise and emotion. Though he didn't say it, I could sense his gratitude, as if my invitation was exactly what he had been waiting for, but hadn't dared to suggest. Paul nodded softly, a faint smile crossing his face, and we stood up together. As we stepped into the small garden behind the retirement home, the sky had turned a gentle shade of orange with the setting sun. A stone path wound through blooming rose bushes, their delicate fragrance hanging lightly in the air. We walked slowly, neither speaking, letting our footsteps and the rustling leaves in the breeze fill the silence. I glanced at Paul, noticing how he intently observed the flowers along the path as if searching for something amidst the serene scenery. I knew he was trying to understand me, trying to grasp the pain I was carrying. And in that moment, I felt a quiet connection between us, a silent bond linking us through the loss and the journeys we were each navigating. We continued walking, occasionally pausing to admire the carefully trimmed shrubs or listen to birds chirping high above. Each step felt lighter, as if the peaceful surroundings were easing some of the weight in my heart. Finally, Paul broke the silence, speaking softly. "Dad, I've never fully understood what it feels like to lose someone you love as much as you did. But I hope, somehow, you know I'm always here, even if I don't say it often." I stopped and turned to look at Paul, feeling the sincerity in every word he spoke. Placing a hand on his shoulder, I gave him a gentle smile. "I know, son. And just having you here, like tonight, is more than enough." We continued walking, saying nothing more. The sky gradually shifted to a soft purple hue of the evening, and I realized that sometimes words of comfort or lengthy explanations weren't necessary. The presence of someone you love is enough to soothe the deepest pains. That night, after Paul left, I sat in my room reflecting on what had been said. The pain was still there, profound and heavy, but I came to understand that no matter how hard it gets, the love Vera had for me and the love I had for her would always remain a part of me. And perhaps by holding on to that love, I could slowly find the strength to move forward. The relationships we build, whether with beloved family, cherished friends, or even fleeting acquaintances, fill the empty spaces in our hearts and souls. They bring connection, making us feel we are not isolated individuals in this vast world. These bonds not only provide understanding and comfort, but also serve as an anchor, keeping us steady when life feels overwhelming or too immense to bear. Think of each relationship as a thread, each with its unique color and texture, weaving together to create the vibrant tapestry of life. Some threads shine brightly, crafted from moments filled with laughter and joy. Others are quieter, carrying the shades of challenges and hardships we've overcome together. And then there are the shimmering threads, holding love, care, and the memories we keep close to our hearts. These relationships don't need to be perfect, but they are undeniably important. A simple check-in, a hug when needed, or even a quiet presence is enough to remind us that we are not alone. These moments, small but genuine exchanges, bring meaning to life, helping us realize that our connections with others make each person's journey worthwhile. Looking back, we'll see that these relationships prevent life from being a monotonous string of repeated days. Instead, they transform it into a colorful and emotional journey. The tapestry of life, woven from the connections we build, stands as a testament to true wealth, not measured in material possessions, but in the love, understanding, and meaning we find in the people around us. Renowned Japanese author Haruki Murakami once said, "I always thought people grew older little by little, but that's not the case. People don't age gradually. They age in a flash. A day passes, a year ends, and in the blink of an eye, a lifetime has gone by." This quote touches on a profound truth everyone will face. Time waits for no one. We live day by day, year by year, thinking there's still plenty of time ahead until we suddenly realize that youth has quietly slipped away. The first strands of gray hair and the wrinkles forming at the corners of our eyes remind us that time moves forward, whether we want it to or not. This isn't necessarily a tragedy, but deep inside, we sometimes feel silent tears, emotions unseen and unspoken. Aging doesn't just bring changes to our appearance, it also transforms how we view the world. The world seems quieter, not because there's nothing left to say, but because at times, silence carries more power than words. As we grow older, we understand that not everyone can truly grasp the journey we've been through, and this realization no longer troubles us as it once might have. Understanding doesn't always need to come from others. It can come from within, from learning to accept and appreciate everything we've experienced. As time passes, the challenges that once brought us to our knees and the joys that once made our hearts leap all contribute to shaping the person we become. We learn to grow stronger in the face of adversity, wiser in our choices, and, above all, to cherish life's beauty, a fragile, fleeting, yet profoundly meaningful beauty. Life, though brief, is a remarkable journey. The memories we accumulate over the years and the lessons we draw from our failures and successes are invaluable gifts. And when we realize that each day, each moment is part of a greater picture, we come to appreciate both the silences and the noise, the joys and the sorrows. Ultimately, all of these elements combine to create the true essence of life. The most precious memories of life, once vibrant and vivid like paintings filled with color, gradually fade over time. The small details, the laughter, the glances, or the gentle touches begin to blur as if shrouded by the mist of passing years. The longer I live, the more I realize that life, with all its beauty and complexity, can be both a source of immense inspiration and profound sorrow. There are moments when accepting this truth feels almost unbearable. In those times, I struggle to find peace within myself. But then a strange stillness emerges, as if whispering that not everything is meant to last forever. And it is this impermanence, though painful, that makes me cherish all the more what remains here, in the present. Throughout life's journey, pain has always been an uninvited companion. The more you pour your heart into something, the more vulnerable you become when it doesn't go as you hoped. Yet perhaps this very vulnerability proves you are alive, that your heart still yearns, hopes, and is still brave enough to love and trust once more. Even so, over time, I've learned that placing all your hopes in one place is a mistake. Hope can be the light that guides you, but can also become the source of profound disappointment. Those disappointments, heavy as they may be, are where I found my true strength. In those moments of falling, I realized I could rise, not because someone demanded it of me, but because that strength had always been within me, waiting for me to discover it. This realization isn't just a lesson, it's the most valuable gift I could give to myself. The awareness that I can endure, no matter what life brings. Strength isn't about being unbreakable. It's about the ability to rise after each fall, to continue hoping and loving, even knowing that pain will always be part of the journey. As we approach the later chapters of life, let us reflect. Let us remember what we've been through and the lessons learned from love, loss, hope, and even disappointment. Growing older is not an ending, but a pinnacle of understanding. A place where you can look back and see that despite everything, you've lived a meaningful life. And that, I believe, is the most wonderful thing any of us can achieve. Today, what left the deepest impression on you? What lesson will you take from these experiences, and how do you plan to apply them to your life? Moments of self-reflection like these help us grow and create opportunities to change how we view the world around us. I would love to hear your thoughts. Take a moment to share in the comments below one thing you've learned today and how it will influence your actions moving forward. Your experiences and lessons could become a powerful source of inspiration for others, those who are also on their journey of self-discovery, just like you. Sometimes, even a small story is enough to light up someone else's path. If you found this video helpful, or if it resonated with you, please leave a comment to share your thoughts with us. Don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful content in the future. Your support is a tremendous motivation for us to keep going and a way to spread positivity to even more people. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I look forward to seeing you in future videos, where we'll continue to share, learn, and walk together on this inspiring journey called life.